I could describe David Pogue as a Westport neighbor, a tech guru who's written for the New York Times, Scientific American, Yahoo, and dozens of missing manual books. Or I could describe David Pogue as someone you've seen on PBS Nova and Sunday Morning, reporting stories about everything from science and technology to culture and society, and winning several Emmys in the process. I could do all that, but I won't. I could also talk about his musical theater background, which he reprises every Christmas as Techno Claus. I could do all that, but I won't. So I'll ask him, how do you describe yourself?
Well, I guess career-wise, I'm probably an explainer. Is probably my one overarching shtick, whether it's science or technology. As you noted on CBS Sunday Morning, they've now had me doing explainers on NFTs and crypto and gas prices and inflation and Ukraine. So I guess that's the one overarching professional theme. And then personally, I think I'm just fundamentally a show-off. I was the third of three kids, the one who got the least attention. So I think I've spent the rest of my life trying to make up for that.
So where do these ideas come from? I mean, do you come up and say, I really want to explain NFTs?
I'd say half the stories I do for Sunday Morning are my ideas, and half the stories are the producer's ideas, and they come to me.
Do you know anything about the stuff you're explaining?
Sometimes. I mean, the technology stuff, I often know more than my expert that I'm interviewing. But, the political and economic stuff, no. That's the beauty of going out and asking questions. And when it's a show as big as CBS Sunday Morning, you have the luxury of being able to get whoever you want. This Sunday, I have a story about the Amazon and Starbucks unionization efforts. And we were able to interview Chris Smalls, this hero of the JFK 8 warehouse on Staten Island, who by himself, I mean, no outside consultancy, he organized these 8,000 workers into Amazon's very first union. And I mean, everyone wants a piece of this guy. He's got book deals. He's had multiple Hollywood studios chasing him. But I got to talk to him. So it's a great place to be.
And he did that after Amazon had said that he was not very bright, right?
Yes. In fact, you'll see in the story, it's really great. I asked him, so what's that quote that the Amazon executives, and he laughs and he goes, not smart or articulate. And then we go through the story of how he did it, which was all grassroots. He'd bring, the pandemic inspired Amazon to stop serving lunch to the workers. So he'd bring in lunch and he'd have union literature with him and so on. And so at the end, I'm like, so you succeeded because you were smart and articulate. And he goes, that's right. It's pretty great.
So how do you prepare? I mean, do you have a team that's prepping you, or do you sit there and say, this is something that I, David Pogue, really want to figure out?
A team. Well, I'm assigned a producer for each story, and these are incredibly talented, detail-oriented, old-school news people. And this is CBS News. This is Walter Cronkite. This is an old-school, hardcore news organization. So they do a lot of research on their own, and they present candidates that we could interview, and we go back and forth on that. And then I'll just read a bunch of stuff, and off we go.
Wow. How much time does that take? How much is CBS Sunday Morning in your life, and how much is other stuff?
I've been on Sunday Morning a lot lately. As we speak, it will be 8 consecutive Sundays with stories, which has never happened before. I'm not exactly sure why all of a sudden, but I like it. I love it. So usually maybe a day of the week I'll be interviewing. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 days. And then it's really cool how it works. They record the audio of the interview and send that to a rush transcription service that sends me back a Word document that looks like a screenplay of the entire interview. And I work from that to write the script. and then I send the script in to the editor. They also have the most unbelievable editors, and then they put the story together. It's Sunday Morning is. If you've never seen it, you won't understand. But a lot of people call it the best show on television. I'm not just touting it. I mean, I hear that all the time. And I think one reason is, first of all, the stories are long, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes long, unlike the evening news where you get 45 seconds to tell the story. So we have the time to really dive in, get multiple interview subjects in each story. And it also tends to be, in general, an upbeat show. It celebrates art and achievement and moving stories and progress, which is, I think, how it stands alone on the landscape. I mean, it's not a sickly, cloying, sweet thing. It's a celebratory Sunday morning show, and I think that's why people like it.
It's a great Sunday morning show, and it's positive. It's upbeat usually. And your competition is, a couple hours later, Meet the Press and Face the Nation, and This Week, where everybody's yelling and screaming about, the issue of the day.
Yeah.
It really is. Even though you're talking about Ukraine and things like that, it is in a way much more timeless.
Yeah, I mean, a classic example is I was assigned a story about how Ukrainians are fighting back on social media. It's almost a second war. The war of public opinion, which they've totally won. I mean, they've completely trounced the Russian point of view, whatever that may be, in that the entire world is rooting for Ukraine. And I interviewed a young woman who's in sort of a cabin. They're 20 hours a day, this group of 8 people who do nothing but post on social media and send pictures and videos. And I mean, it's a devastating situation in Ukraine, but that particular side of it just makes you marvel.
Yeah. And the video is great too. I mean, it was very, very compelling.
Yeah.
So how do you get to be David Pogue? How do you go from Ohio to, musical theater to the New York Times to Missing Manuals to CBS? Did you plan it out that way?
No, nothing was planned. College kids will ask me, how do I get to do what you do? And, I just answered the phone and said yes. I didn't plan any of this. So when I was a kid, I was really into theater, and I was in all the plays and schools. And so I was a music major in college, and I went to New York City to do Broadway. And I worked on Broadway shows for 10 years as a conductor and arranger, trying to compose shows. And during that time, there was this software program that came out called Finale. It's still around. It's kind of the Microsoft Word of sheet music. And the amazing thing is you could play on your synthesizer and it would write out what you were playing as notes, which had never happened before. I really wanted it, but it was $1,000. I couldn't afford it. So I wound up working part-time for the New York Mac Users Group. And we had a little 8-page Xerox newsletter, and the editor said, well, what you could do? You could tell the company that you are our reviewer, and they'll send you a free copy. I'm like, it's that easy? And so I did, and they did, and I wrote a review, and I kept doing that for Microsoft Word and Photoshop and anything else I wanted. I get free software, and that led to writing for computer magazines, and that led to the New York Times column, which went on for 13 years. And because of the New York Times credit, I got involved with CBS Sunday Morning. They wanted one Pogue story in 2002 about this then brand new invention called the digital camera. So I did an explainer about the digital camera. And then I just kept on doing Sunday morning stories. I mean, that whole thing just fell into my lap.
The breadth of what you do has always amazed me. I remember when you were working for the Times, you used to have a full-time assistant who would just unpack and repack stuff that they sent to you.
I did. The Times was willing to pay a freelancer to come and do all the packing and unpacking. I mean, these electronic gadgets, there were cables and chargers and manuals and CDs, and it was just, I didn't have time for that.
So what do you just teach yourself as you go along? I mean, you didn't take a computer course when you were younger. You haven't taken courses in the geography of Ukraine or the future of currency.
Yeah, that's right. I guess I'm a quick study, and I learn as it goes along. And certain human tendencies are the same everywhere you go, so that helps.
And the missing manuals I would buy them, when I bought a new device, and it was already out. So you had worked with this stuff for months beforehand? Or
Well,
how
on
did that
behalf
work?
of the Pogue College Fund, I thank you for that. That's right. I would have to write the book so that it was done when the product came out. And I started my how-to writing career with the Dummies books, blah 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 for Dummies. I did 7 of those, and then I kind of ran out of expertise. I did Max and Magic and classical music and opera, and I couldn't write any more Dummies books because those are the things that I knew. And so, and I had a book agent at the time, and he's like, "Well, why don't you start your own series? Then you can write about whatever you want." And that was where that came from. So the Missing Manuals, and that had an amazing run. Wrote the first one in 1999, and they were finally discontinued this year. It turns out that people really aren't buying computer books anymore to learn stuff. They just go to YouTube or Google, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I have enough else going on, but I do get an email or two every day saying, "How come there's not a missing manual about the new iPhone?" And I hate to tell them, it's your fault, to you people who
Google
stopped
it.
buying books.
Google it.
Yeah.
So what have you learned in this journey about technology and people's relationship with it?
It's interesting about technology because it's a whole unique ecosystem unto itself, in that the way you get people to buy the next version of your software or the next phone, they really have only one lever to pull, and that's the feature list. So each year they add more features to what was already a very complicated device or a piece of software. That was, I think, the great idea of the Missing Manual series, is people like you had to buy the book every year. And people like me were chained to the desk every fall because they all come out in time for the holidays. So fall was hell for me. I had a MacBook, an iPhone book, and a Windows book that I had to do every single year in the fall. And it's not entirely healthy because, first of all, there's the electronic waste from all this stuff we keep buying and then throwing away every other year. And it gives people a sense of being overwhelmed and being stupid. And, I don't understand this. I'm aware that I use only 1/10 of the features of this thing. I feel stupid. It's not good. It's not really people's fault. No one uses all the features.
Yeah.
No one could. But again, it's that machine. How can they get you to buy the next version? They got to add features and make you feel inadequate.
I feel very inadequate, and because I only use 1/15. This is 06880, the podcast. So let's sort of pivot to Westport. You use Westport a lot in some of your videos and in a lot of the stuff that you do.
Mm-hmm.
What got you here and what kept you here?
Let's see. So I was living in New York doing the musical theater thing, and then when my then wife Jennifer and I had kids, we thought, we thought we should get out of the city. We moved to Stanford, and Stanford was doing fine. And then in 2001, the tech bubble burst, and the school system eliminated the music program. Not cool. All 3 of my kids are very musical. The gifted program. All 3 of my kids are in the gifted program.
Every kid in Westport is gifted.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's above average. And they eliminated sports till 10th grade. It was a bloodbath. So like a lot of people, we started looking where else can we go? So it was the schools.
Yeah.
So we just moved up the road, and the schools did not disappoint. Two of my kids are now, through college, and they both noted, wow, it's easy here compared to Staples.
Wow. So if you've done a lot with the schools. I mean, you feel pretty connected. What is the state really of education for kids now, and are we, either in Westport or nationally, or I guess both, preparing them for the future that you're always thinking of?
I mean, my older son, Kel, is just about to finish getting his master's in education. He wants to be a math teacher, and he'll be a really good one. And just yesterday, I was overhearing one of his final classes, which was being held over Zoom, and it was a panel of other Connecticut teachers talking about their experiences and what they recommend. And I could overhear from the laptop speaker one of them raving about the Westport school system. So I think that it's and I used to speak at educational conferences all the time. It's nationally known here. At Staples, I feel like if you need a lot of help, or if you're at the other end of the spectrum, you're a genius, you'll do really well. What I've heard is that people in the middle sometimes get lost in the shuffle. But bless those teachers, my kids have had a great experience.
Yeah. And in terms of what you see nationally, what are, I'm always wondering about kids coming up, what they're learning, how they're interacting with the world around them, the impact of social media. Optimistic, pessimistic?
It's pretty clear that things are going to have to change, I think. There's a lot of discussion of alternative models like the flipped classroom, or involving people's phones in the process, because they're fighting phones a lot. I think the biggest challenge right now is the inequality. It's beyond anything you can imagine. My son's been student teaching at a school in New London. There's no auditorium, there's no cafeteria, there's no library. The cafeteria is a room with chairs and rows. They call security 3 times a day. The turnover among teachers is something like 20%. I mean, people just quit in the middle of the year. The kids are divided roughly into 3 groups. There's 4 kids who sit in the front row and want to learn stuff. And then there's some kids in the middle who basically just talk through the whole class. And then there's kids in the back row who are completely checked out. They're just on their phones the whole thing. And the pandemic was a total disaster in education everywhere. In this New London school, they are still required to conduct, maybe not at this moment, but as of a couple months ago, they were still conducting some classes over Zoom, optionally, where kids don't have internet at home. So the city would provide this dial-up speed internet, too slow for video, so you couldn't see the kid, and they couldn't see. I mean, it's just absolutely a disaster. So the inequity thing is shocking and outrageous in a country like this. As many as a third of students, I did a story on this for Sunday Morning, in this country don't have broadband internet, period. I mean, some school systems are parking school buses full of Wi-Fi routers outside the poorer apartment complexes just so the kids can get online and do school. So I think that's by far the biggest thing we have to fix.
Solvable?
Not in this political climate, I don't think. I think we won't see the daylight break through until more money, more attention, more resources are dedicated to the poorer school systems.
Wow. You've mentioned several times your interest in arts and musical theater and all that. How does that fit in with the tech side of you?
I think basically, I'm just a showman at heart. So I love doing things that are funny or musical. my grandfather was an amazing guy. He died just shy of his 107th birthday, and he was a lot like me. He prized humor, and he was an artist. He was an architect by trade, musical, and he once said, "There's nothing worth writing that isn't worth writing entertainingly." And I mean, it's true. If it's a news article, if it's an advertisement, if it's a blog post, whatever it is, I mean, if it can be entertaining, it's better. And I do believe that. And I believe the same thing with the Sunday morning stories. No matter what the topic, I try to preserve a little humor. I mean, even in the Ukraine stories, the people I was interviewing sometimes crack jokes. And when I write the script, I try to keep that in because we're still people and we still have highs and lows.
Most memorable story you've ever done?
Oh, man. I did a story about the end of the space shuttle program. And we went down there for the last space shuttle launch to Cape Canaveral. And I had this idea. So CBS News has a building there where you have a great view of the launch pad. And everybody stands on the roof there with the cameras on the tripods. And Katie Couric was to my right, and NBC was over there. And I said to my producer, I've got this final speech, and so as the final space shuttle lifts off, it goes where NASA will now have to go, onward and upward, or something like that. It was 17 seconds long. And I said, it'd be so cool if the rocket were lifting off over my shoulder as I'm saying that. And of course, everyone's like, that's insane. If you stumble, you've lost the whole thing. You've ruined the take. You will not have another shot. And I'm like, let me try it. And it was only a minute away. And I remember Katie Couric standing to my right goes, it's not going to work. Like, you can't pull that off. And I didn't even I was making up the line on the spot. It wasn't like a memorized script. So I decided I would just say it a couple times through in my head. I'm in position. I'm looking at the lights in the camera. My producer's standing facing me like you are now. And I got through about half of it in my head when the producer goes, you're on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my heart was racing and I could hear behind me. And so I'm like, and so as the shuttle lifts for the last time. Anyway, I got it. I didn't stumble. And then it turns out the liftoff is more than 17 seconds. So I was able to turn around and watch the shuttle go into the sky. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'll never top this. This is the greatest moment of my life. And then what happened? People accused me of using a green screen on Twitter. A close second was last May when I did a story about the 20th anniversary of the space station, and NASA arranged for me to have a live video Skype chat with the astronauts on the space station from my living room. It doesn't get better than that. That was the coolest.
I remember that. Your enthusiasm was, and to me, it was just, this is where Westport literally meets not just the world, but the galaxy.
I lost my mind. That was the coolest thing.
Wow. Most interesting person you've ever interviewed?
The guy I interviewed last week is pretty close. He lives in Waterbury. He is a self-described, undereducated skateboarding mechanic. He's 40 years old. He is a maintenance man for a church in Waterbury. And 5 years ago, a buddy of his, who's a contractor, was hired to clean out an old barn that was being prepared for sale. And it was filled with big, old paintings, like hundreds of them, like 300 paintings, each one individually wrapped in heavy plastic, been there for 40 years, covered with dust and rat droppings. And the contractor thought that my guy, Jared, might want to use them to serve as art for his, Jared has a skateboarding facility that he owns. So Jared comes up and he looks these things over and he's like, this is like somebody's life's work. This is all signed F. Hines. Who is that? He Googles F. Hines. Nothing comes up. Jared becomes obsessed. He becomes an art detective, and he spends the next 5 years tracking down the story of F. Hines. Turns out It's Francis Hines. He was a big deal in the 80s. He did wrapped buildings, kind of like Christo. He wrapped the Washington Square Arch. He did a wrap in JFK and Port Authority. And then he disappeared. He withdrew from public life. He made paintings every single day, and no one ever saw them. He didn't exhibit them or sell them. He just liked painting. So he would paint these things, truck them to this barn, and let them just pile up. And then he died. And nobody knew anything about it. So Jared solved the mystery, tracked down the descendants who took a few pieces that they wanted and let Jared keep the rest. He got gallery owners and art historians involved, and they told him this stuff is now worth millions of dollars. So in Southport, there's actually going to be a showing on May 5th. They're going to show 50 of these amazing paintings and sell them. And this guy was really interesting. I mean, it's, as he put it, it's, the New York art snob world meeting the blue collar street. And he did it all himself. He just became obsessed with solving the mystery.
And it was great. I mean, you brought all that out, and it was just fun. There's a story everywhere, I guess.
There really is, yeah.
So what's the story you would love to do, the interview that you'd like to do, or the place you'd like to go to get that story?
It's a great question, but I mean, the shameful, overly privileged truth is there's hardly anything we can't get, When I grew up, I loved Electric Light Orchestra, ELO, Jeff Lynne, and this was a rock band with a string section. And, Mr. Blue Sky was their big hit. And I heard that after 30 years away, they were going to tour again, the United States. I mean, Jeff Lynne is now in his 70s. And Nikki, my wife, said, you should do a story on him. Get to meet your idol. And so I did. It was pretty fantastic. So I think most of the dream stories that I want to do, I'll probably wind up doing, but they're really cool. Like, I want to do a story about baby carrots. I don't know if you know this story, but
no.
Baby carrots were invented by a carrot farmer who found himself throwing away 20% of his regular carrots because they were misshapen or stubby or too bent or whatever. And he found that by putting them in a grinder and polishing them into these smooth little nuggets, he could sell them as baby carrots. And now the whole market has flipped on its head. Now that's mostly what we buy. Hardly anyone buys the big carrots anymore. And people used to think, oh, it's a special species of carrot. It didn't start out that way. Nowadays, they have started to breed baby carrots. And it's just a fascinating story. I want to do a story on microphones, how people are mic'd on every TV show, every YouTube video, everything we see, there's a microphone hidden on that person. And on Broadway, they put it in your hair. On TV, they put it under your shirt. But I was watching a Netflix game show called Floor is Lava. It's a takeoff on the old children's game where you have to jump from couch to couch because the floor is lava. Except in this instance, the living room is a big swimming pool made of orange water with pieces of furniture floating in it. And contestants who are wearing nothing but a bathing suit have to jump from furniture to furniture piece, and typically they fall in. And it's a big room this size. So how do they mic those people? They can't have a mic on their bodies. They sound close up. So anyway, they must be hidden microphones in the furniture or something. I think it'd be really cool to do an expose and take a bunch of examples that people have seen. I just love revealing the secrets to what's been right under people's noses.
I don't think there's ever been a sentence uttered in the history of the world that has included Jeff Lynne, baby carrots, and microphones. So history has been made here.
Yeah.
Last question, going back to Westport. You've been here a long time. What's your, you go around the world, you talk to the space station and all that. What are your go-to places here?
Well, of course, a lot of time at Longshore. We rent the sailboats every summer. Campo, library, These are all going to be old answers for you and your readers and listeners. And the schools. And our house backs up onto the Bedford Fields. So it's super handy for going on a run or launch a model rocket or testing a drone, pick up soccer, my kids do sometimes. So honestly, the Bedford Field is a big one.
Great. Anything I should have asked? Any last words to the people out there in Pogueland?
No, I think that was well done, well prepared. I would just say, if you've never seen Sunday Morning, check it out. It's, of course, at cbssundaymorning.com. You don't have to watch it live. I know 9 a.m. on a Sunday can be early. Give it a shot. It's really something special.
Oh, it's great. It really is. David Pogue, thank you for being a guest here on 06880, the podcast, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.